So this is I got this from the Gray Zone. They do great work. Max Blumenthal, Aaron Matei. They go, so at the far right, that guy on the far right in that picture is opposition leader Luis Fernando Camacho. He's in Bolivia's presidential palace with a Bible after the coup, right? So he stormed the presidential palace, this guy, Luis Fernando Camacho, and he made his millions in the fossil fuel industry, right? So yeah, keep that in because that's going to come, what? A millionaire fossil fuel guy is a revolutionary? I don't understand. Well, it'll be explained in a second. So just so you know what was happening in Bolivia since Morales got elected in 2006, a new research report from the Center for Economic and Policy Research analyzes Bolivia's economic changes since 2006 in the context of the Bolivian government's main policy decisions. It finds that it has been policy choices, not merely a commodities boom, that have been the driving force in Bolivia's surge to be the fastest growing economy in South America over the past 5 years. Strong economic growth has allowed Bolivia to reduce poverty by 42% since 2006 and extreme poverty by 60% since 2006. So you know that they can't let that shit. Especially since he turned his nose up at the IMF, right? So the International Monetary Fund, you know how they work, right? They go and they force loans on countries, and then they know you can't pay them back but the banker's got to get his money. So now you got to start selling off your public lands to the bank, and now so now everything gets privatized because the IMF just fucked you, and that's their MO. And so he put an end to that shit. Morales, notably, the Bolivian government ended 20 years of IMF agreements in 2006. Many of the policies responsible for Bolivia's economic success since 2006 were previously opposed by the IMF, including, most importantly, the renationalization of hydrocarbons. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, wait, that fucking guy. Oh, wait a minute. That millionaire on the right, he made his money in hydrocarbons. I wonder why he wants to have a coup. Oh, that's right, because Morales nationalized all the hydrocarbons. And so now the people own their own hydrocarbon, like the oil's in the ground in Bolivia, or the gas is in the ground in Bolivia, so it's the Bolivian people's. So, but then it was just a company's. Morales says, that's bullshit, it's our gas, and I'm gonna take the profit from that, and I'm gonna lessen poverty, and I'm gonna educate people, and I'm gonna give them health care, and I'm gonna give fucking housing, and I'm gonna build parks, and I'm gonna make it livable. And we're gonna have the best economy growing in 5 years of all. So that's what he did, and they can't have that shit. So Bolivia has shown that it is possible for a small, poor country in South America to make substantial economic and social progress with macroeconomic stability, solid income growth, and redistribution through a mix of state-led heterodox economic policies and markets. What's heterodox mean? Do you know? No. Fucking ha-ha. I don't know either, but at least we're even. Sounds dirty, right? Oh, he's giving it a heterodox. Oh, does it? MMT? Okay.
Oh, I was hoping to get heterodox tonight.
I thought he said DMT. I'm all for DMT.
Okay, I'm up for that.
So why is this happening? Why now? Well, there's the fossil fuel shit he took over, right? Bolivia is very rich. It is said that it has 70% of the essential material to make new batteries. We all know that there is a change in energy taking place in the world. Former Uruguayan President Jose Mujica said, right? So there's that, and then he was opening up their markets, capital markets, to China, which is a no-no, and he was going to give lithium to the Germans, and they can't have them. No, we got to have it. We got to have it, right? So the U.S. Agency for the International Development, the National Endowment for Democracy, it's called NED. Now, if you don't know who NED is, recently I got smeared by an online news site called Bellingcat. And they said that I took money from a pro-Assad group, and then later that year I said the gas attack was a false flag. So I did a little checking. on who Bellingcat was, and they're funded by the National Endowment for Democracy, which is the fucking U.S. State Department's regime change wing. It's called NED. So the government is literally funding guys to write smear pieces on other U.S. citizens who are telling the truth about war. So that's who so the U.S. Agency for International Development and the NED has long thrown millions of dollars at Bolivian opposition groups and NGOs, that stands for non-government organizations. So NED is funding these people that are sowing discord or revolution to overthrow the democratically elected socialist Morales, right? And they're doing destabilization efforts, including violent anti-government protests in Santa Cruz, which just happens to be where a civic committee leader and Christian zealot, Luis Fernando Camacho, is based. So the United States government is funding this guy, Luis Fernando Camacho, who's a millionaire because he wants to get his goddamn gas back. The United States want to get rid of a socialist so the Chinese doesn't have their capital markets invested there, and we get to keep the lithium. So that's what the fuck is going on in Bolivia. Just so if you weren't sure what's going on, that's what's going on. Now, they had an election. And all 5 out of 6 polls predicted that Morales would win by 10 points. And now, if you win by 10%, they do like 2 runoffs. There's the first one, and then if somebody wins by 10%, it's over. But if you don't, the top 2 have a runoff. Well, he won by more than 10%. And that's here it is. This guy says, eventually the official count was released. Morales won in the first round 47% to 36%. So it's over 10%, so they don't go to a second round of voting. So he's the president, and that's it, right? If you had been watching the polls before the election, 5 out of 6 of them predicted the same result. Where to have a fraud that matches up with the polls, right? So there's no fraud, right? So this guy, we did the fraud.
No, they admitted the fraud.
Who did? Okay, hold on. That did not happen, but hang on. That did not happen.
How serious is this situation now? People are using words like...
So this guy who wrote that report I just quoted from went on the BBC. Watch this.
How serious is this situation now? People are using words like coup. Are we really there yet?
Well, I don't know, when the army tells the president, hey, why don't you pack your shit, get the fuck out of here. I think we're there yet.
Well, I think it is serious. I think the opposition, or the leadership at least, is trying to overthrow the government. And, near majority, 47% of the people voted for the president, which was over 10 points more than the next runner-up. And so he won.
But those results, sorry to interrupt straight away, but those results are exactly what's disputed. Do you have faith in those results?
Yes. Well, if you notice, you can read, dozens, hundreds of articles since October 20th on the web and on this election, and not one presents even one shred of evidence that the election was in doubt, stolen, or anything else. And so this is very bad. I think it was very bad decision on the part of the Organization of American States. They put one sentence into their press release after the election without any evidence whatsoever, implying that there was something wrong with the result. And so that was picked up by most of the media, but you can look at any website for any major news organization in the world, and no one has yet presented any evidence, and that's because there isn't any. I mean, you don't even need a statistical analysis. We did one, which you can see at cepr.net, but you can just look at the numbers from the election, and there's nothing that indicates anything was wrong.
Okay, well, given that, why are so many people out on the streets now then, do you think?
Well, you had a lot of people in 2009 on the streets tried to overthrow the government then. And so you do have an opposition that wants to get rid of this government, and they've used violence in the past. And so it's not that surprising. But I think the media has played a huge role by simply repeating over and over again this allegation, which is really nothing at this point more than an unfounded conspiracy theory, because there's nothing to indicate that there's something wrong with the result. And the Organization of American States is there now conducting an audit, and the opposition refuses even to accept that because they want to get rid of the government.
What about...
Okay, so there you go. So that is what's happening in Bolivia. There is never any evidence. There's no experts, but the media is reporting it over and over. That is true. The media is reporting over and over that there were irregularities. Turns out there weren't any. In fact, he went on Democracy Now! And he said this.
Preliminary report, and there's really nothing in this latest so-called preliminary audit that shows that there was any fraud in this election, but it was repeated over and over again in all the media, and so it became kind of true. And if you look at the media, you don't see anybody, you don't see any experts, for example, saying that there was something wrong with the vote count. It's really just that OAS observation mission, which was under a lot of pressure, of course, from Senator Rubio and the Trump administration.
So the OAS is the Organization of American States, right? And so they're funded by the United States, right? And so they've been pressured to say this shit. So, and they're saying it, right? So they're the only ones saying that there was irregularities in the vote count. There weren't irregularities. They have no evidence. There's no proof. Nobody showed any. Here we go.
To do this because they've wanted for some time to get rid of this government. In terms of the Trump administration, you can look at tweets.
Okay, so there's one more thing he says.
A military coup supported by the United States.
So, Mark Weisbrot, you have the CIA involvement in coups in Bolivia in 1952, in 1964, 1970, 1980. Would you add?
Ooh, that's that's nice.
2019 to that list?
I would add it to the list. I mean, we don't have the hard evidence of what they did. It's not like 2009 in Honduras where Hillary Clinton wrote in her memoirs that she worked in the OAS to prevent the elected president, who you've had on this show, from coming back to the country and to the presidency. But I think we'll probably find out more later. But it is very obvious that they.
Okay, so there you go. So that's what James Carville. What about him? Oh, Bolivia, really?
Yeah, he ran the campaign for one of the right-wing presidents.
No, for one of the right-wing presidents? No shit. All right, see, this is what I'm talking about. I will look into that. So here, maybe it's all the fucking Constitution buildings and Liberty Bells and shit. You guys take this shit a little too seriously. So here, Philly. So here is how CBS reported this. You ready?
Bolivian President Evo Morales has resigned. Morales announced he was stepping down Sunday afternoon after the military asked him to leave office.
Yeah, they asked, hey, by the way, I forgot one more thing. Would you mind stepping down? Would you mind, I'm from the military, which I forgot to ask. It's a beautiful house you have. Would you step down? Look, we'll help you pack. I'll even get you an Airbnb in Mexico. No hard feelings. So they went and ransacked his house. Morales' house. They went and ransacked his house. All of his cabinet, political people like mayors and cities, they went and so they're leaving the country because shit's getting real, and they're backed by the CIA. Here's how the Washington Post. By the way, I forgot to, let me just see.
Bolivian President Evo Morales has resigned. Morales announced he was stepping down Sunday afternoon after the military asked him to leave office. An audit indicated there was a clear manipulation in the country's elections last month. Morales' victory sparked deadly protests, which have shut down schools, businesses, and public transportation. Earlier in the day, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo tweeted support for the findings from the election report and called for a democratic electoral process.
Yeah. So there was irregularities in the poll. Can I just say this? I wonder if the irregularities in the polls, did it include the person with the most votes not winning? Because that's the kind of shit we like to do. It's good. CBS is good at downplaying military aggression, right? You see that? They're pretty fucking good at that. All right. CBS stands for polite imperialism. Here we go. This is how the richest man in the world's newspaper covered it. This is the Washington Post. This is how they covered Bolivia. And by the way, this report is brought to you by the same groups that showed people in Iraq thanking George Bush after invading them for no reason. Okay, here we go.
Bolivian President Evo Morales resigned after nearly 14 years in power amid a fierce backlash over a disputed election.
First of all, why did they have a high school girl narrate this? Okay, all right. And she's got like a voice phrase like, it's I don't know. Is that wrong of me to say that?
No.
Okay.
Stunning fall came hours after the Organization of American States said it found, quote, clear manipulations of the voting system.
But they, again, offered no evidence. There's no experts to back it up, no nothing. And Washington Post just repeats it. So you see what I'm saying when I say that, or when everybody said, the traditional mainstream establishment corporate media are just stenographers for the State Department. And that's why we're in 7 wars and nobody even fucking knows about it. So here we go, a little bit more.
Duele mucho que esos señores, algunos comités cívicos y partidos que han perdido, llevar a la...
But why does the background music sound like an arcade game from the 90s? Right?
Violencia, llevar a la agresión, enfrentando entre bolivianos y bolivianos. Y por esta y muchas razones, estoy renunciando, enviando mi carta de renuncia a la Asamblea Legislativa Plurinacional de Bolivia.
The heads of armed forces and national police called on Morales, Bolivia's first indigenous president, to resign after weeks of widespread protest. He denounced the pressure as a coup orchestrated by his right-wing challenger, former President Carlos Mesa.
Notice how they don't say he was wrong in describing it as a coup. They just go, he announced it as a coup and yeah, whatever, moving on. That's it. They don't go, well, was it a coup? Was it not a coup?
And other opposition leaders. Strikes, protests, and roadblocks had paralyzed South America's poorest nation ever since the October 20th vote. At least 3 people died in clashes between Morales' supporters and opponents.
Somos libres, sí pudimos. Por fin cayó el dictador. Ha caído, somos libres. Ahora podemos decir que el pueblo está más unido que nunca.
Celebrations broke out across the country as news of the president's resignation spread.
Yeah, and so did protests demanding that he be reinstated, except you're never gonna fucking mention that, are you, you Bezos lackey? No. Yep. That's right. That report is so slanted you could build a skateboard ramp on it. So this guy caught this, Alex Rubenstein. So there was a pro-Bolivia coup demonstrators in Washington, D.C., and they're waving the U.S. flag, shouting, "Thank you, USA," outside the White House. So they're just kind of like, hey, that's right, you guys, I know you fucking helped us, thank you very much. Their party, by the way, got 4% on October 20th, but they had the Bolivian SWAT team on their side. So that's how you get to overthrow a democratically elected government. And this is like how Guaido in Venezuela, his political party is the 6th most popular in Venezuela, but since it gets most of the funding from USAID, they were chosen as the coup figureheads because they are the most reliable proxies. And that's what's happening in Bolivia. So this guy he writes, he's an editor at The Atlantic, right? So you think that they're smart and whatever, and this guy says, no, Evo Morales' resignation is not a coup. It is one of the few big victories for democracy has won in recent years. Both leftist dictators. First of all, what is a leftist dictator? This guy's a dictator. He's giving me healthcare, education, clean water, and a living wage, fucking asshole. What are you gonna do next? Give me housing? I hate these leftist dictators. I don't think that's a thing. So that guy writes, so I retweeted that and said, this is straight up State Department propaganda, and it gets printed in The Atlantic. They're the ones always warning us of the dangers of Trump lying and Russians manipulating our brains through memes. Hashtag Operation Mockingbird, motherfucker, still going on.
And you know what? There is is no way the American government wants us to get the real story about Bolivia.
No.
They don't want us all uniting and coming
That's
together
right.
and going on the streets and fighting for what we deserve. They don't want this. They're squelching it throughout the world.
And they don't want you to know that there's a socialist leader who's popular and bringing those people out of poverty. They certainly don't want you to know that. And the Washington Post will make sure you won't know that. So Jorge Ramos asked Bernie Sanders about Bolivia. You know Jorge Ramos, right? He's a fucking CIA tool also. And you're going to see it. Watch.
Wrote in a tweet that you thought it was a military coup, what happened in Bolivia. Many people have other point of view. They think that...
So now here it goes. Other people think other things like the CIA, and here I'm going to say what it is right now. Here we go.
Evo Morales had been in power 14 years, that he wanted 5 more, and that he wanted to become a dictator. So what do you...
He wanted to become a dictator. And how did he do it? By winning elections.
No, I don't agree with that assertion. I think Morales did a very good job in alleviating poverty, in giving the indigenous people of Bolivia a voice that they never had before. Now, we can argue about his going for a 4th term, whether that was a wise thing to do.
And the OAS thought it was a fraud, the election on October the 20th.
Some people think that as well. But at the end of the day, it was the military who intervened in that process and asked them to leave. When the military intervenes, Jorge, in my view, that's called a coup.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Bernie. Yes.
Attaboy, Bernie. So Bernie's getting better. Because normally, Bernie would first repeat the CIA pretext for invasion and then say we should stay the fuck out. And since I've been on his ass for doing that, they stopped doing that. It's nice to see he's not doing it. I'm going to take credit for it. Okay. That's called pulling him to the left. That's called pulling him to the left. All right. And thank you. No way. Anyway. So the U.S. called for a military coup in Venezuela yesterday. Did you know that? It utterly failed again, and a few hundred people in a rich elite area came out to march with Guaido. At the same time, the Chavista government held this huge rally to show solidarity with Bolivia against the coup. Yep. Come see our live show. We're going to be in Honolulu on December 27th. We'll be in Portland, Oregon, and then we go to Tempe, Arizona, San Jose, California, Sacramento, Miami. Go to jimmydorecomedy.com for a link for all the tickets for all our live shows coming to a town near you, and become a patron or support the Jimmy Dore Show. We give you hours of bonus material every week. Go to jimmydorecomedy.com, become a premium member. Thanks for your support.